I'm Desmond Landers, your startup advisor and partner in entrepreneurship, and this is Going Global Luxembourg style, or as they say, Luxembourg. How do you like that? I don't know if that was right, but that's what they say around here. Anyway, I'm in Luxembourg. Luxembourg is actually a city-state of about 550,000 people. It's kind of the equivalent of Washington, D.C., except a little bit smaller, but from a land standpoint, it's a little bit bigger. And it's landlocked by Germany, Belgium, and France. Many of you probably haven't even heard of Luxembourg, and up until a couple of years ago, back in 2010, when I made my first visit, I didn't even know that it even really existed, to be 100% honest with you. Luxembourg is a very interesting country because it's a very tiny city-state, but it's very, very wealthy. The people here enjoy a very high quality of life. The average income is about, I think, like $81,000 or something like that. And in the States, it's only about $47,000 or so. So for all of us that think the United States is the center of the universe and that we experience the highest quality of living around the world and have the highest incomes, that's simply not true. Luxembourg is a very, very wealthy country, and they get a lot of their wealth from the banking, finance, and insurance industries. A lot of people don't know this, but Luxembourg is second in the amount of deposits and money kept in the country from outside sources, only to Switzerland's. Have you ever heard people talk about a Swiss bank account? Well, let me tell you this. The real people with real money that want to be low-key and under the ground, they come to Luxembourg, which is not too far from Switzerland. But Luxembourg has some of the strictest secrecy laws, and that draws tons of finance, banking, and insurance and reinsurance companies. Reinsurance means companies who actually insure insurance companies to this land. And since they only have to support about 550,000 people in the place the size of the tri-state area, Virginia, Northern Virginia, DC, and Delaware, that's kind of the size of Luxembourg, maybe a little bit smaller. They don't have a lot of capital expenditures like road improvement projects or bridges or all the stuff that we have from an infrastructure standpoint in the United States. So a lot of that money that comes in from the tax and the commissions they get from money in banking transactions for corporations and individual people that's actually held here is just really held in the bank, and they can really kind of do what they want with it. So it's a really cool country because most of that money, or a large portion of that money, actually goes into the citizens. So once you become a part of Luxembourg, it really seems like you're in the club, if you will, for example, and they really do take care of you. I mean, the students here actually get a lot of their higher education subsidized. For people here that are kind of on tough times and don't have a job, the government really steps in. I mean, you think that some of the social programs in the United States are good. Come to Luxembourg, and people, you will rarely find a homeless person on the street. Very different from like a Paris, France, or if you go some places like in the Netherlands, or if you go to Greece, like I was in a couple years ago, or even the States, where you see homeless people everywhere. It's just not something you see here. So it's very interesting to see that dynamic and how a small country can actually take so good of care of their citizens. Now, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, those are some really, really good things, but the initial challenge is getting in the door. One, you've got to know someone here. I've got some extended family here, so that's why I've been coming a couple times over the last couple years. And I kind of have a small foot in the door, but not a real foot in the door because I'm not a blood citizen. I'm not a Luxembourger, as they say. But one thing is you have to have someone here or get some level of nationality here in some degree. The second thing is, if you're going to start a business here, it is kind of expensive, and there is a little bit of red tape, actually a lot of red tape, to be 100% honest with you. The last time I checked, which is about 2 years ago, just to get the ball rolling on a private corporation and kind of getting that incorporated in the country of Luxembourg, you're looking at about 12,500 euro to start. That's around $15,000, $16,000. So for all of you that are complaining about $125 to $350 in incorporation fees in the States, you have nothing to complain about, because now we're talking about just $15,000 to $16,000 for documentation to get started. That's not even filing with the tax department. That's not even getting equipment for your company. That's not even buying any software programs. That's nothing. That is just getting the incorporation process started. So that can be kind of challenging. The other thing is, they want to know that you have a vested interest in this country. Because it's so small, the resources here are delicate, and they do have a lot of money, but they want to know, in order for you to get access to the money and be able to trade with the people that have very high incomes here, some of the wealthiest people in the world live here, so being able to do business in their jurisdiction comes at a different premium. Now, some companies that you've heard of, like PayPal, Amazon, eBay, have actually relocated their European arm to Luxembourg, believe it or not. So, again, PayPal's here, Amazon's here, eBay's here, and people, they're basing their whole operation from this little country for all of Europe. Now, many of you know the peer-to-peer voice calling system named Skype, right? All of us use it. Billions of people around the world actually use Skype. The cool thing about Skype is it was actually created here. And you can't see this, but just right down here, you can actually see the Microsoft Office, which used to be the old Skype office, and actually Microsoft acquired Skype about a year ago. So from a mid-level company standpoint, this is a great environment to do business because there's very, very low taxes once you get in the door, and it's very friendly to trade and the economics of business, more so than most other places in Europe. Now, Luxembourg's been getting in a little bit of trouble for their secrecy laws and their alleged tax haven kind of activities, but hey, if you're a wealthy person, like a lot of people around the world, and you want to pay taxes, but you want to make sure your money's secure if there's an unstable government, or if you don't want things to be seized, it's a fantastic place to hold your money. So, there was a song by a friend, not a friend of mine, but a guy that I'm a fan of named Ryan Leslie. He made a song called Swiss Francs, and he says when he dies, he wants to leave his money in a Swiss bank. Well, when I die, I want to leave my money in a Luxembourg bank because I know it won't be touched. And I think if you can get access to that, you should too. So, back to the entrepreneurial thing, right? If you can get in the door here, I think it's a great place for trade. There's a lot of opportunities to do business here, and you'll be making money in euros, which is what I'm trying to do. Forget the dollar. The dollar's old school. The euro is new school. That's something that you should be trying to do. What else can I tell you about Luxembourg that's interesting? Because, in these Going Global videos, I try not to give you a history lesson, but it's really, really tough because a lot of these places have very historical significance. Now, here's what I'll tell you, high level. Luxembourg was actually created sometime in the 900s, even pre-medieval times, right? We're talking 1200 years ago, this place has actually been around. And when it was first created, there was a palace actually put at what is now today's city center. And the city center, and you can't really see this, but just over here it's actually raised above, but the city center is actually where the palace used to be. And so, Luxembourg's so small, a lot of invaders and people tried to come take it over, and rule of Luxembourg was changed hands from, different large European powers over the history of time. But what's interesting about it is under the city center, which lies basically at the top of a mid-level mountain, they actually built an underground tunnel system named the Casemates, and that's where they used to kind of transport troops and soldiers. And the cool thing is, at the sides of the base of the mountain, there's actually openings, and those openings gave troops the actual ability to look down at the river that was around it to see if invaders or intruders were actually coming. So they could kind of pop, pick these guys off from the mountain and not even have to go down and fight. I mean, it's really ingenious. Now, what I suspect also, and don't tell Luxembourg I told you this, but I suspect that some of the major wealth that's in Europe is housed somewhere in these Casemate mountains, or at least it used to be tunneled through here. I mean, could you imagine an underground tunnel network like a subway, except for there's no subways there, and there's people walking around, and there's hidden compartments? I mean, there's a lot of stuff just in these little rocks here. And as you can probably see, you can see the different levels. Down here is the Grund, which is basically the ground area. It's kind of like the older part of the city where, prior to or after they stopped using it as a defense mechanism, right? Because the palace actually being on the top of the mountain is actually a defense mechanism because so you can see everybody. Once they stopped kind of worrying about being invaded and kind of moved into the modern times, they started to build what you can see down here, which is the Grund, which is homes and houses and monuments and all this type of stuff. Now, what's interesting about this is you have multiple levels. So you have the Grund, then you have this mid-level here, and then as you go up here, it gets higher, kind of going back to the palace. So it's very, very interesting. A lot of people don't know that about Luxembourg, so that's my little history lesson on that. Another thing that's interesting about Luxembourg is that the European Union, this country was actually a founding member of the European Union, or the EU, if you will, and then also the European, courts of justice, I believe, and also the European Parliament is actually based here as well. So let me see, I wrote a couple things down here. I wanted trying to see here if there's anything else I should tell you about this. That's pretty much it. Luxembourg's a cool place. If you're in Paris, it's a 3-hour or 2.5-hour train ride. If you're in Germany, if you're in Munich, it's a couple hours coming back to the west. And if you're in Belgium, it's I believe it's like a little bit south of you. I've been to Brussels from here a couple times and everything like that. So I would highly recommend you coming to Luxembourg. And even if you don't start a business here, you'll be able to see the extravagant and lavish wealth kind of tucked away in a very hidden old world place in Europe. And so here's my summary. If you're an entrepreneur, I want you to try to make some money in euros, and Luxembourg is a good place to do that. And if you have a lot of money, open a bank account here. I'm Desmond Landers. This is Going Global Luxembourg style, and I'm signing out. You're a startup advisor and partner in entrepreneurship. Start a company, start one in Europe, and make some euros. Talk to you soon.